How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today finally got the review on this one, the Western Star 47X NF1424. That's probably the last time I'm ever going to call it that. We'll just call it the 47X Wolf. It's got the custom wolf paint job, but yeah, we'll get stuck into it and see how it stacks up against some of the other stuff. The first one is the engine. Just the bottom one, whatever code name that is. It's S plus on the power though, and to be fair, the power is pretty decent on it. The gearbox, gone for the high range. Suspension, it's got active and raised. I've just gone for raised in the end, like it's one of them. If I put the active on, I just forget to even activate it half the time. It does actually lift it up a little bit. As for the tyres, again, to be fair, not bad. 48-inch tyres. Considering this is quite a small, compact truck, that's actually pretty decent. I thought they'd be nearer 45s or whatever. I've gone for the chain tyres. Mainly because as I go through the different maps tonight, I'm going to be putting the chains on anyway for like all the snowy maps. But yeah, just it keeps it kind of even. It's not like a tyre review video; it's a truck review, so it's kind of just a good benchmark. The winch, I went for the top winch. The diff locks, it's got engageable diffs. The snorkels, they don't quite go to the roof, but yeah, we'll get to that later. But they sit fairly high. All-wheel drive, they haven't actually done an animation yet though to change like the front axle. Not that I really care, but I just noticed that was the case. I believe they did the same for the GMC 9500, I think it was that. Yeah, the sideboard, I'm pretty certain, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty certain these didn't have a sideboard on, like when I first got them, but now they have. It's got a roof rack, which is pretty cool. It's half the size of the loaf, which is no surprise, the biggest roof rack in the game. 150 repair points, 4 tyres, 120 fuel. The sun visors, they look pretty cool, but I'm just not going to put them on because it's just another way that it can restrict a bit of your view when you're in the in-cabin view. There's all sorts of different attachments on the roof, horns and aircon and that. I've put some fog lights on, but when you go through the bumpers, there is one that kind of adds its own fog lights. So for the front bumper, there's that one which is the stock one, sits pretty flush. That one clearly sticks out a lot more. And then that one, it sits a tiny bit higher, but again, clearly sticks out a lot more. But it's got like a kind of skid plate on the front of it. Personally, I'm just going to stick with the stock one because it does sit the most flush and all the rest of it. But there probably is situations, particularly the one with that skid plate, it'd kind of be quite handy because, again, when it gets into the video, I'll just show you. The exhaust, there's these 3 types. I've left the stock one on. There's none that just like stick out the bottom and kind of get rid of them. The alloys, there's all the different options because it's just pretty normal truck tyres, but again, I'll leave the normal ones on. Paint jobs, there's this Wolf one, which is custom one. It's pretty nice actually, and it shows up quite well at night. I'll get into that in a sec, but yeah, overall, I think it's pretty nice without sort of overdoing it. It looks right in black, but it looks like there's dust all over it. Doesn't pop. It looks quite nice in white. And then these are the custom colours. You've got the blue, green, black and white, red and black. And then that one, I don't know why, it reminds me of like some old school Batman and Robin or something. In fact, I think the F750 has this paint scheme as well. Yeah, so we'll go outside, have a look at the old beast. Overall, I actually think it's a pretty good looking truck. And when you look at it from the side, the chassis actually sits pretty nice and high on it. But those fuel tanks that are on either side, kind of, you can tell, sit a lot lower. And yeah, that's what, if anything, you're going to beach on all the time, is like those. If it didn't have them, or they were just sat higher, it'd have some pretty bloody good ground clearance. As for the tyres, they turn nicely. They don't do any of that stupid stuff where you apply, say, left-hand steering and it'll do a quick wiggle of right-hand steering for whatever reason. Pretty modern looking inside, although I don't know why, it's not a mirror. Crank my head for it, like a camera looking at me. I don't know about that. See me putting a cloth or something over that. Got a super wanks bed though, and it's got a window in the back so I can actually see the garage. Because that mirror, I can't really tell a lot. I can technically see a bit of the garage. This mirror can barely see anything, mainly because that exhaust guard thing is in the way. And I also can't see the rear tyres. And I can see the front tyres, but you got to be like the camera will soon, yeah, sort of yank your head back in the window. Again, it's not the end of the world. 99.9% of the time I'm using the exterior view. As for the horn, it's actually not bad. Again, for a fairly little truck, it's not like some little squeaky car horn. For the engine, it idles at 500. It's a slow climber, and I believe it goes around to about 1700 if you sit there long. It gets to 15 and then it kind of takes a little while to get the last 200, but yeah, I don't know if that means anything either way, but I just kind of mention it in the videos, so if they ever do change it, or I think they might have, I've got a reference to go back and check. Sort of went around that corner without tipping it. As for the trailers, I believe every single trailer, unless I've forgot one, but it can have the saddle high, the saddle low, and then the towable trailers as well. So yeah, I believe everyone, certainly all the main ones I can remember, the ones that are worth remembering. And then yeah, if you change it to night time, which I rarely do, turn the lights off. I can't really stop all the other orange lights on it, but you can see the wolf's eyes glow. On the roof there's kind of like stars, I think it's supposed to be. And then on the front there's also that wolf with the glowing eyes, which again, I think it looks pretty nice. The moon kind of shows up on it as well, without being too crazy and over the top. Yeah, I think it's a pretty good looking truck and paint job. Motoring along here, it was in high gear, it ticks along just fine. Like I said, the power is S+, so I actually think it's pretty decent. I've got a feeling it's quite comfortably S+ as well. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to haul the heaviest cargo in the game, because it's a fairly lightweight truck and all the rest of it, but certainly at least on its own and all the rest of it, even cutting through here, I didn't expect it to smash it like the Off-Road Dolphin would, where in fact it got its nickname going across this very bit of mud. But yeah, considering it's got quite a highway-esque truck thing going on, it kept ploughing through there. It didn't start just wheel spinning and churning up the mud. It actually, even in high gear, kept it going a little bit. And then yeah, even motoring along there, it's doing alright. It does pick the pace up quite nicely. Going down here to go and kill a tree. I'm in auto at the minute to get the maximum speed. I hit that tree, I completely like ate the vast majority of my momentum, so I can kind of tell from that it's not a particularly heavy vehicle. Put it in high though, it does knock trees more consistently. Like once you've hit the tree, it only takes like a split second for it to kind of boost its way back up into the high range speed. Going around here, starts bogging down about now. To be fair, it didn't just chew its way into the ground. I kept it pinned, and it got its way through there, which is pretty decent. Again, so the best vehicles in the game are probably going to go around there without much issue. Although, if I remember correctly, the vast majority of videos I've done, they usually do start wheel spinning and slow down when they're in high gear. But yeah, it didn't just dig its way in, and I need to fire a winch out to get out of there. So again, that's pretty respectable enough for what it is. Going across rocks like this, you're picking up the odd 1, maybe 2 damage here and there, but considering the pace it's going and all the rest of it, it's not that bad. I don't think I took any like massive hits where it just suddenly deleted sort of like 30-40 suspension off me. And from what I remember, there was not an issue with suspension the whole night, so yeah, it can't be that bad. Well, I nearly deleted it there. Dropping the hammer, going for the auto. Hit the old anti-terrorist barricade. Took a hit, but thankfully it didn't like delete my engine or anything. Took some more hits there. This first bit of mud is just horrific, so I'll cut ahead a little bit. Every single vehicle seems like that's like the original super mud, at least. Yeah, now ticking along, it does catch on those dead trees a little bit. That front bumper, again, that's kind of, you can tell it's like a little bit of a highway it's kind of highway vehicle that I suppose a bit like the Navistar, although I still prefer the Navistar. Yeah, it's kind of a highway truck that then put kind of off-road tyres on, lifted the suspension up and all that, but the front bumper, it'd be nice if you could either remove it, or if one of the other options kind of just sat a bit higher but doesn't stick out too far. But again, it's not a particular killer, it was just stuff like that. Other vehicles have caught on those trees, so yeah, it's not the end of the world. And it keeps ticking along through there. Again, didn't just burn a hole into the ground and you need to kind of stop or drop it down. I think it was high gear for that. This was like before I started the video. I was just kind of testing it out before, even though I've driven it already, but ploughing through this bit of water, about now a lot of vehicles slow down quite quick. I think this becomes bordering on like super mud. It lost its speed a bit there, but then even in auto still, it started picking it up again, which yeah, is not bad. I only really left this next bit in because even though I've ran over this so many times, it only really dawned on me like the new farming phase. This is like the original crop field. And then someone said because it was Halloween, and I've kind of missed the boat now, but run over some pumpkins. I was like, yeah, I agree. Any excuse. But then this bit of mud as well, like a lot of vehicles can bog down when they're bouncing over this, and this is ticking along quite nicely. It's more when you go over like a big hill, it'll try and catch on the fuel tanks. But as far as those like little bumps in the field, it was yeah, again the chassis and everything sits quite nice and high, and the wheels are not a bad size for the size of the truck. I reckon I could have easily killed all of them trees, but just the 8th tree I think it was, I kind of clipped at a bit of a funny angle as I was spinning the camera around, so I completely missed the last 2. Ramming these trees, I think that time, is there 10 trees here or 8? Either way, I've got all of them except one. Typical, the engines are not too healthy right now. But one last little burst, stick it in high range quickly, takes the tree out with its last breath, and yeah, I've deleted the engine. But we win. Next up, Northport, so I'm in high gear, jumping across the snow. Pretty decent and respectful there as well, to be honest. Everything pretty much slows down there, that's where it sort of transitions into super snow. Getting over there though, it's a pretty good example of like the truck does sit high enough and the tyres are kind of big enough. Now you can see where the front bumper kind of a little bit, if it sat a little bit higher I would have been able to just go straight there and bump it over, but instead I had to steer to the left a bit, but nothing too crazy. Like I said, it's the kind of vehicle I wasn't expecting it to be an absolute top of the tree off-roading monster that's gonna give the likes of like Dolphin and that sort of thing competition, but I was also hoping like it's not just going to be some generic, I don't know, some people have said the HX520 is not bad, and I'm sure in certain situations it's not. When we got given it in Erskine River, it was just, yeah, it couldn't really live up to that phase. I haven't taken this on Erskine River, to be honest, or the Amur region, but even cutting across that snow just there is pretty decent. It managed to climb up this rock, it wiggled a bit there, but managed to climb up in one go. Jumps down here, it does beach the tanks, but quite a few do. Still bumps over that rock, just. And yeah, it didn't tip over. As far as the weight goes, I mean, factually enough, you'll sort of see it now. It's not tippy, but there's not enough weight low down to try and stop it tipping either. I might have just got a bit of a funny bounce there and I caught in with my front bumper, but I tipped over to the side, went back, had another go, managed to jump again, but again got a bit of an iffy bounce. Some boxes went flying in the air. 3rd time lucky. Hit the pipes a bit straighter. Yeah, that's what she said. Flung a panic winch out. I probably would have been fine without a panic winch, but nonetheless, after the 3rd time I was doing it. Yeah, cutting through the trees. This part, it got through quite nicely. It was driving up here about now. I was thinking, oh, it's pretty decent, because a lot of vehicles are even slower now. Again, like, yeah, the HX520 I kind of found didn't really like ploughing through snow or anything too much. I just remember getting it stuck quite a lot on Erskine River. For some reason now, I got caught on the trees. I don't know if I just got unlucky, but between the snorkels and the exhaust pipes, there's a definite chance I could have just caught one of the branches, which, yeah, if you could remove the exhaust, it'd be, I wouldn't say no if it just did a stock exhaust sticking out, like, you know, behind the fuel tank or whatever. And yeah, again, the snorkel, they're certainly the more catchable snorkels of like some of the ones you can get that sit really flush with the truck. But again, it's not the end of the world. It's not that often you squeezing through trees that are all packed that tightly. Next up for the cargo test and turning test, I suppose. Turning, can't really fault it. It's not got a super tight turning circle or anything, but it didn't have to hit those garages. It's running over the little snow banks between them, but plenty of vehicles have, so yeah, I'd say about average, but decent average. And steering, for the most part, I don't find the steering too bad, but every now and then, I think it's with the suspension, even though it sits nice and high, it's kind of not spongy in a way. It's quite hard suspension, so you kind of tend to bounce on it a bit, and every now and then I think the nose kind of lifts up and you tend to understeer, but like I said, it's not, I wouldn't say it's like an inherent characteristic. When you're just driving along normally, it tends to steer where you want it to go. But yeah, every now and then you can definitely tell that it could probably do with, not that I think it's like a terrible vehicle by any stretch, but if I could kind of, you know, adjust it to any way I wanted, I'd probably add a little bit more weight and then put the weight a bit lower down and more towards the front. Possibly adding the roof rack could help a little bit, but then I don't doubt as well that's like kind of, if it's going to add weight, it's going to sit quite high up on the truck. Going through here, pretty respectable to be fair. I thought it'd struggle more than it did. A lot of vehicles, even some of the pretty decent ones in the game, don't really like cutting through there, and I've got a semi-trailer with cargo fully loaded, so yeah, can't really fault it there. Did it in one clean run. I did bring a Tatrin through earlier to get in this footage because I'd left some scout trailers, you can see just on the left of the screen now, so I'll move them out of the way. I doubt it though. I was going to say maybe when I drove across there I might have like squidged some mud out of the way with the Tatrin tyres, but yeah, for the most part it's not really been that bad in mud tonight, so I'll let it have the win. And it's one of them where times like this road does get kinda like super snowish. It doesn't like letting you go that fast unless you can get up into the high range. And I believe this can, even at this speed, it's pretty lenient on the high range. You still can get it saying it'll stall every now and then, but I even was managing to jump it in high from first gear, which is pretty decent. Most vehicles are going to make you go at least into second gear. As I'm driving along now, I was looking for somewhere to park my trailer. I don't know how many trailers we've got now, but got to be 60 or 70 odd, I would have thought. Except that gap there is, there's a logging station to the right. It's my shortcut out of there, so I did have to move a trailer. Yeah, pretty much trailers all the way down to the water, so I started parking them in this yard to the left now. Job's good. If anyone wants some service spare parts, you let me know. Loaf's having a special offer. Going through this bit of water, it's doing fine there. You can tell now where you hit the deeper patch. I won't say it. And but to be fair, this thing did carry on, like it didn't really instantly lose its speed or anything. It kind of did hold a little bit of momentum. And yeah, overall, pretty decent through there. Sits narrow enough, squeeze through this rock. Unlike, say, P16, has to kind of go on a diagonal to get through that bit. And a few other vehicles, probably the Colob. That sort of stuff. The branches there, they do catch you a little bit, but it didn't catch the exhaust or anything like to where it stopped me there. And most of the time you do catch those branches a little bit. The branches in this game are like OP, old school Tekken bosses or something. They're ridiculously overpowered. Considering it's just branches on a tree, it's not even a tree. It's a twig. A twig is able to stop trucks in this game. At the loaf probably. And then yeah, this little patch is like original super mud, super snow section. But going up here, the bonnet sits quite low because that little tree that's kind of in front of my steering wheel now, fairly often with vehicles, they kind of like, you lose the bottom half of the tree as you're coming up the hill. It's now is like an example of why I don't put the sun visor on, because sometimes it sits quite low, and if your vehicle's kind of dipping down a hill and you need to kind of look towards the roof of the vehicle, like you see where that non-rear view mirror is, it'd kind of block, if you drew a line, it'd sort of block all that, so yeah, I tend to leave them. But they look pretty nice, and it's one of them. I'm doing the video, I know I was going to do a bit of interior view and all that, but in the scheme of things I'd happily put one on it, so I'm in that view so rarely. Cutting across here, caught its nose a little bit there, that's probably like the kind of flush highway bumper, but it didn't hang around for long. It soon quite a few vehicles catch there, it kind of bounces its nose and then carries on. And again, power wise it does apply it pretty well. One of the big things I think that makes this vehicle feel better as far as speed goes is it doesn't feel like they've punished it that bad with the rev caps and all that stuff. Like even when you're in boggy mud, boggy snow or whatever, a lot of vehicles sound like they're practically like 100 revs above idling. And you can just hear from the engine, I don't know, it kind of bothers me in the sense of, it's not really the vehicle is now stuck in the snow, it's just like the game isn't behaving how it would. If you floor the throttle, you should be able to go all the way up the rev range, whereas the game quite often doesn't let you. This, I'm sure there is rev caps on it and stuff, but it just doesn't feel as severe, and you can even hear from the sound of the engine. Now, for example, it still sounds like it's putting some effort in, which kind of just makes me feel better. Just from the sound, I know that, strictly speaking, they could put any sound behind it, whether it sounds like it's idling or it's flooring the crap out of it, but I'd rather hear the flooring the crap out of it sound. Just for some encouragement. I don't know why, this pipe, some of the taller vehicles you get caught on it, but I drove under there, what the hell did I drive under there? Oh, it might have been that Rezvani Hercules thing. And even that started bouncing around on it. For whatever reason, I don't know, like the hitbox of that pipe seems to hit lower. I assume it was the exhaust that were catching on it, but still. Back before this most recent update and all that, I used to squeeze quite a few pretty tall vehicles under there, and they'd only really start jiggling around when you're actually slammed up against it, and like you can't get a vehicle under there, or like a big tall vehicle like the P16. Whereas yeah, something like this should have just slipped right on through. Mud test, like the Devil's Mud section in Northport. And strictly speaking, I didn't particularly have high hopes just because of the general highway nature of this vehicle. And the fact that the front bumper is like a big spade that's just going to be digging in. But even now I was like, well, this is already not terrible. There's a chunk of vehicles that don't even really let you go along the edge of the mud, let alone start steering into the deeper stuff like this puddle I'm kind of heading into. And to be fair, about now you can see it was crawling along like a tiny bit, but it basically stopped shortly after that. So I've flung a winch out, kind of pulled it back to the edge, and again, it's actually moving under its own steam, which is not too bad. There's a goddamn horse. Yeah, going up the mountain on Northport. I believe now is quite a good example of the weight, because the snow, it leans here, and some of the tippier vehicles, I did hit it at, like, probably could have gone a little bit slower, but yeah, you could it's on the edge. Like I said, I don't know if I'd go as far to say it's tippy, it's just, it never tries to fight the tippiness once you start, so I sent in the loaf and saved the day. I had to edit various bits of footage. This video, it's yeah, a bit of a long one. Yeah, that's what she said, of course. Insert penis joke here. Well, remove the word joke from that sentence and it still makes sense. So eventually though, we did actually, like, a bit calmer driving, and it didn't tip over. Get to this kind of nose test, it caught the bumper, and again I think it's another good example. You can see I'm tipping a bit now, but it doesn't just instantly go, like there's loads of weight up high, but it doesn't fight it, and eventually, yeah, it goes. So again, send in the goddamn horse. It's not a particularly difficult vehicle to tip, it doesn't weigh that much. I edited it there, but I tipped again, just as soon as I got back in the vehicle it pretty much tipped, so give it a bit more of a yoink with a loaf. Now I suppose like another little nose test, kind of catch the bumper there. It wasn't too happy about it. I was trying to wiggle around a random Zik 605R parked here. But yeah, I mean, I assume it's the bumper. It's either the bumper or the front axle, but I'd be inclined to say the bumper. For the roll-in test, normally smaller vehicles will do a roll and a quarter, but that thing kind of caught on its exhaust and slid down a little bit, so it just worked out quite nicely that it done like a full 360 by the time it was at the bottom of the hill. Went a bit further down the hill though, and rolled it, to send in another horse. Just thankfully, it's not my first rodeo, so we have goddamn professionals scattered all over the place. Climbing up here, and for a start, like, climbing wise, it was feeling like it was going well. Trying to scoot it over to the left. You see again, it's not the worst, but it's not the best for that kind of level of tippiness. But it's not the only vehicle that's tips on that. When I try and like scoot it over to the left, that little patch of snow you can see, yeah, it does. There's a few vehicles it kind of flicks over on its side. But as far as just going straight up the hill, bit of wheel spinning going, but yeah, not too bad. Even that little bump I went over there, it didn't even beach it there. And then now, trying to drive along the peak, but I knew this was pretty inevitable. I didn't even think it'd quite get that far, but it did. And yeah, I could have sent in the loaf and flipped it, but I've kind of learned what I need to know about the mountain test. It's not terrible in snow by any means, but yeah, just tippy wise on the severe angles. That car, like, did they just put that there on purpose? Every time I try and come out of that garage with a semi-trailer, it just gets in the way every time. Unless you go wide enough and pretty much drive up the mud bank. Even through these little bumps though, before you get to the gateway, you didn't really get caught up there, kept going. What's this bloody map? Quarry. That's the one. And yeah, takes that corner alright, digs in a tiny bit, but not too bad. Even through this muddy section, I mean, it didn't fly through it. It's not like the best vehicle or anything like that, but I've certainly had vehicles that have struggled a hell of a lot more getting through here. I've had to fire winches out to the various trees and posts and that lined along the left. But again, now you can hear with the engine, even when I'm in low range, it's still got a nice tone to it, like it sounds like it's putting a bit of effort in. And again, I do think to a degree, like the rev limits in this game do directly affect it, like they have basically killed the revs to the point where even though you might have 1500 revs on your truck, if it's only going to let you sit at 600 RPM when it idles at 500, it, yeah, just feels sort of wasteful, and it's kind of like an annoying way of nerfing it because, yeah, in real life it just doesn't really work like that. Driving along here is pretty stable as I kind of bounce over these rocks. A little bit of a jiggle on that, but nothing special. Certainly had vehicles go flying a lot more than that. And yeah, to the quarry. Plenty of trailers sat around. Goddamn horse. Remember that Land Rover jumping off the cliff. Hit the loaf and just stopped dead. The loaf wasn't taking it. Goddamn professional for a reason. Going over that bump, no real issues as far as like beaching goes. You kind of just have to launch it off there. Another loaf sitting in amongst the trailers. And going through here as well, there's a fair amount of vehicles that really don't like this section, especially that I have to take that kind of specific route around the trailers. I don't know why, I was kind of staring at the trailer thinking appear concrete slabs, but I wasn't actually pressing any buttons. I don't really know what was going on for a second. I just kind of assumed that they'd jump in the trailer for me. At the last second I was like, oh yeah, shit, I've got to do it manually. First world problems and all that. Yeah, got a goddamn horse in place. It starts tipping now. I actually did this 3 times going up here. The first time I tipped, I believe I left the footage in. Yeah, that was the only time of the 3 as I was kind of starting up on the first quarry hill that it actually tipped just enough to unpack it. But again, that's a good example of if I had a flat bed trailer, they probably would have slid off as soon as they unpacked. So sometimes you get a little extra chance to not have to get a crane out. This can't have a crane. I know that much because I tried to fly a loaf in White Valley. And that's why now I'm kind of going wider on this angle, because I kind of cut diagonal across that dip and it tipped on me. Damn, normally you can floor it and like scoot the front round quick enough to miss that. But yeah, did alright that time once I took the right angle. Yeah, I think this was my first attempt. And up to now, it flew up the hill just fine. It ran out of power about there, so I went into low range with the diffs on. Yeah, you can see just there it starts going, and again it just doesn't have anything really to fight it once it starts going. And I fired a panic winch out, but it didn't help. And yeah, now for the third quarry hill. I was kind of thinking, well, I'm in high gear. Might be able to just launch it up there in one go. It was going alright till about now. And to be fair, I possibly could have fired a winch out to the trees. And I didn't even put a loaf in its little loaf hole. And then this rock to the right of me, I kept catching on it. I wouldn't say it was completely the rock's fault, but I don't think it really helped either. But low range with the diffs on, kind of jiggle the steering around to find the right line as I'm going up here. And about now when it's not too keen, but they're still pretty decent for a vehicle with a semi-trailer and the concrete slabs. And the main thing is I was able to fire a winch out to the tree, so I kind of consider that if I can get high enough to reach the tree, that's kind of a half pass. There's only really the best vehicles in the game that get up there on its own. Bruce is one that sticks out in my mind as just at these 3 hills for breakfast, like it didn't even matter. So yeah, that rock to the right of the trailer always catches. It's almost to the point, I don't really blame the vehicle, it's just a bit of a pain in the arse that I wish they'd kind of smooth that rock off a bit, just because otherwise, if it wasn't for that, there's various vehicles that would be able to climb up here under their own steam, but that rock just kind of eliminates that possibility for quite a few vehicles. But yeah, pretty standard, stick a winch from like the trailer to the tree and we're good to go. There was another goddamn professional waiting there just in case, but it was just as I was driving up, I was already in high gear and had quite a nice pace, so I was like, sod it, I'll just keep it pinned. There's another goddamn professional. They're everywhere. Jump off here, kind of swerve to the right at the last minute because I don't want to crash into the Land Rover and everything. Going down here, I mean, again, stable enough. I made it down to the bottom without rolling, so I reversed up the hill diagonally on purpose to tip the vehicle. I kind of knew this was going to be pretty easy, but just for the sakes of it, I've got to know these things. It's that victory horn. And then climbing up here, I didn't actually have the trailer on at this point, but I don't think it would have gone very well if I did. I was more curious like how much it's going to beach. So you get the front axle over and just it's starting to catch on like the fuel tanks, but thankfully sort of kept it pinned, and the rear wheels kind of caught a bit of grip. Yeah, on Lake Coved for the ice. Long story short, it's not very good on ice. It's weird because it doesn't particularly weigh a lot, I don't think, as a vehicle, but pretty much every time I drove over the ice it didn't go too well. I don't know, the front tyres seem to punch in particularly quick, and you can kind of see then as soon as the front tyres went in, the highway kind of style bumper just catches, and I pretty much did an endo. So send in the goddamn professional as usual. I mean, look and go, he's not even got chain tyres on. Oh, broke through the ice, too much dick weight probably. Story of my life. That's how you break the ice, isn't it? Slap a piece of ice with your cup. Say nice to meet you. Grab your coat you've pulled. Speaking of pulling, you don't give up. Even though it's preferable without chain tyres to stay on like the kind of frosty white looking ice rather than the blue kind of sheen ice going on. But he made it. He's earned that victory horn. But yeah, you can see now I went to go over again, just immediately the front tyres do not like it. It gets caught on the bumper. Tried to keep going, but at that point there's not a lot you can do because the front bumper's scuffing on the ice. Even though I was able to push a bit further forward, like the rear tyres grip pretty well to be fair. But yeah, you just kind of plough in further into the ice. So sending the loaf, he tiptoes across that ice. And we're out of there. And then again, I was cutting across the ice. It smashed through again, so yeah, I don't think once I was able to get through the ice. And I mean, same thing, they crunch like with the front so quickly that, yeah, stuck it in reverse. Just another goddamn professional, chilling in the wilderness, just saving lives. Like, didn't you hit my loaf? Damn. Almost had to abandon the entire video because of that. A bit of Jeff special going on. I think with the chain ties you seem to get sparks coming off now, which I don't particularly dislike. Kind of reminds me of Back to the Future. Yeah, already smashed the suspension, but well, we are going to hit that yard. It's my duty. So, go for a jump, in the water, and yeah, kind of not too surprisingly, but it's a floater. It's a bit of a severe floater as well, really. When you look at, like, say where the snorkels are, you don't even really need them. I did spot a polar bear in the background. I've seen it before, but got it on camera. There he is. Car emission reducing, incentivising bastard. Cutting across the river on flooded foothills. And again, because it's such a floater, this is quite a good little test though for vehicles that are pretty severe with floating. They can't get through the middle of this, but the current kind of carries you along. You sort of sit on a diagonal angle. Long story short, if I could touch the riverbed, I'd be able to go to the left of that Scout 800. Which was, I originally left the Scout there as kind of a test, so when they were updating the maps, or like the phases each time, just to see originally if it steals my Scout 800, but touch wood, it never has. But yeah, once you let the current kind of drag you along, you sort of reach the other side of the river, and then can get out of there. Going along the White Valley runway, getting a bit of drift going on. I'm going to throw it to the right at the last second. Some weird flip. Oh no. Headbutted my aviation fuel trailer. The game realised how difficult it was to get that trailer up there. Bringing the goddamn horse with us. Yeet him off the cliff. And look at him go. It's kind of fancy flip. Of course he lands on his wheels. It's goddamn professional. In fact, that ramped flatbed floating in the air. That was definitely the hardest trailer to get there. If I ever do anything that makes that trailer fall from the sky, I'm definitely going to have to do a quit and reload. So yeah, did jump off a cliff, the truck landed sideways, so the loaf landed on his wheels as usual, so it's a pretty good chance to flip the vehicle, which oh, I tried the front winch point this time. It's got 3 winch points on the front, which is pretty cool. Yeah, again, I was never really worried, it's just not really a heavy vehicle that's gonna scare the loaf like that. It can flip Zixes and P16s and all sorts, so this thing's merely a little breakfast snack. But again, floating being the issue, I was kind of doing a snorkel test / drowning test, but you're just not realistically gonna ever drown this thing because it floats so bad. So that was about as far as I could get into the water, which isn't a lot really. There's an entire dolphin sat in the water there, I just spotted. Yeah, send in recovery loaf, gets the job done. Took a nice little loaf hole, but again, editing that to chop a few bits out. So he could sit on the vehicle like with his back hanging off the back of the truck, but I moved him to the front. I was able to pack the loaf. He always finds a way to get on there. And at this point, I kind of knew it was a bit of an irrelevant test, but I was just curious to see if it would sink anymore when it's got a loaf sat on the roof. Which I suppose it did a little bit, because you can kind of tell from the snorkels they actually hinted there that the water level was pretty close to them. But that being said, it's definitely still a floaty beast. He's not going to win any prizes going through here, and it doesn't even do, for example, like the Voron Grad is a bloody good example of it, where the front floats but the back doesn't, so it can sort of tiptoe its way along. And yeah, didn't make it too much further into the water. Started to tip over, which I don't think was strictly the loaf on the roof. I think just floating earlier on when I was messing around in the water. I don't think it's in the video, but it started to lean over a bit as well. The goddamn horse, I had faith, he's tipping off. Only edited about 15 seconds, probably not even that actually, probably about 5 or 10 seconds. And look at him, he's a wiggly little worm, he's finding his way back to his wheels. fire up the engine. That's a big old fat hit of engine damage though. Oh, damn. Repairs. Thankfully, the loaf is packing major roof rack. I think I was caught on the exhaust, and then now I believe I'm caught on the saddle low. But now the controls, it jumps down my menu. So I was trying to do something to do with the winch there, but I hit stop engine. And then I have to fire it up again. Now you take more engine damage. And then I went to go and do it again, I believe, and hit stop engine. Again, like 5-10 second edit there, just because I think the cat turned up. I was just saying hi to him for a second. Bit more repairs, kind of running low. Yeah, no, sorry, that was the one where I was trying to hit add, like attach winch, and it jumps down the menu one, so I stopped the engine again. Stuck a winch, started rotating round, and then, I mean, goddamn horse. Last repairs, 60 points. And I'll admit, things weren't looking too healthy right back now. And then it starts hitting me with neutrals. Like, what the hell? It's never done that to me in the loaf before. Now it hits me like triple. But yeah, just leave the loaf to work his magic. He had 3 engine health left. He likes to take the piss, I'll give him that. He was like a second away from taking another engine hit. Of course, an ambulance chooses now to drive past. I think the loaf was like, call an ambulance, but not for me. Yeah, so like I said, just survived with 3 engine health, but he wasn't done there. I had to send him in to rescue this 47X thing. And of course he does it. Bit of stalling going on, but fair's fair. I mean, 3 engine health. I could have just nipped off. There's other loafs available. I could have repaired, but yeah, stubbornness can be a wonderful thing with a goddamn horse. Climbing up the snowy mountain in White Valley. Again, actually pretty decent. There's definitely quite a few vehicles that have gone slower than this. Even when I got to here now, drop it in high gear and fly up the rest, yeah, wasn't really a major struggle. It wasn't even that slow compared to some. It's not the quickest, but certainly not the worst. Possible thumbnail, we'll see. I don't know actually, I might not win against some of the others. Kind of climbing back up the other side, I flew down the hill, nothing particularly special happened. Gravity kind of helps you go down. Getting back up, purposely kind of do a roll here just to see what's going on. Oh, just missed that. Well, I hit the tree, but didn't get fully caught by it. The little handstand. I don't strictly know what this achieves. It's quite fun to do. And then yeah, that tree had to ruin it for everybody. So yeah, that's kind of the review pretty much done. In summary, I actually think it's fairly decent. It's certainly like, if you're unsure whether to get the set or not, it's a hard one to just answer a solid yes or no, because it depends on how much you play the game, how much use you're going to get out of it. It's not bringing anything to the table that other stuff doesn't, so if you don't get them, you're not particularly missing out. But yeah, it's actually pretty decent. Now it's got the all-wheel drive and that, it kind of stacks up, or it's decent enough to where overall it was kind of, I don't know if I go as far to say impressing me, but impressing me more than disappointing me throughout the night. There was kind of, I was expecting various places where it'd be worse. Money-wise, it is pretty expensive. It doesn't particularly matter at this point. I've kind of used the money mod cheat thing, so I've got about 90 million. So yeah, that's not going to be an issue anytime soon. But strictly speaking, fully done up, it's getting not too far off 200 grand, which is, well, I was going to say like the Derry levels, but that thing's a piece of crap anyway. So probably not much worse, but yeah, that's about done for the review. That's what I'd say really. Overall, not too bad. Slightly better than I thought. And then this last little bit, so it's just kind of a bit of messing around. Jump off the cliff. I mean, see the loaf, he freezes. Just make sure there's no T-Rexes lurking on the beach. And then when he's ready to move, he can. Of course, he makes it to his wheels. It's going to go and flip the vehicle again. Well, I'm going to go and flip the vehicle. I did flip the vehicle again. But for a while, it was dragging along just where it wasn't tipping. It's just because the wheels keep driving, which you can't really stop once you're doing it. It's kind of like zombie winching, basically. It's like an unintended zombie winch. But when I got it around that corner so I could go at more of an angle, again, it's pretty damn easy to flip. It's pretty light on the list of vehicles. And then yeah, last but not least, if the loaf wants to get on, he's getting on. with nothing it can do to stop me. But yeah, that's about it for today. I hope you've enjoyed. I hope that helps. Thanks for watching. Thanks to my Patreon members. Get yourself a loaf because he's a goddamn unit. And I'll be back soon.